Good day, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing a very important topic, which is why I dress professionally. Because today we're going to be looking at Mao's economic and social policies in the first 7 years of his time, which is 1949 to 1949 to 1946. Anyways, let's go.
If you're wondering why I have the Soviet Union remix on, well, it's because I like it. Hello everyone who's watching this video. Today we'll be talking about the first part of Mao's economic and social policies. We'll take a look at the following: industrial impact, agricultural impact, and social reforms. So let's just jump right into it.
History of the First World War and its aftermath.
With Mao's blessing, they wreaked havoc in the name of
Industrialization.
So the main aim of Mao's revolution was to have the lower class, which primarily included peasants, to overthrow the upper class, which mainly consisted of the landlords. As Mao explains in Source 5, the revolution he pictures is, I quote, an uprising of violence whereby one class overthrows another. This idea is basically calling for a classless system, so let's take a look at how he went about achieving this. Source 17 reveals to us that Mao dispatched cadres into the countryside to stir up the peasants and to cause them to be hostile and resentful towards their landlords. Along with their slogan, dig the bitter roots, vomit the bitter waters, party cadres, according to Source 21, encouraged peasants to turn on their landlords. The outcome saw landlords being faced with execution or being subjected to a trial, lose their civil rights and their private properties like their animals and household goods. These would then be distributed among the peasants. An example of land distribution can be seen in the following image. Ownership of private land still remained, but landlords held as much as the poorest peasants. And the outcome? Well, in Source 1, 300 million landless peasants, which was 2/3 of the population, acquired land without paying after the land reform was completed in 1952. In addition to these events, Mao helped increase the annual growth of food to 13% and the annual growth of cotton to 61%. Thus, we can evaluate that Mao was successful in suppressing landlords in order to help the peasants, and in addition to that, help the agriculture in terms of rate of cotton and annual food output. Aim number 2. In Source 24, we can see that one of Mao's educational policies was to, and I quote, enable everyone who receives it to develop morally, intellectually, and physically, and become a worker with both socialist consciousness and culture. In simple words, Mao wanted people to be educated so that they may understand and follow his moral guidelines, follow a socialist mentality, and help China's economy by working together. In Source 28, Mao got his party workers to teach villagers how to read and write, as well as being taught Mao's communist, or Maoism, which is a form of communism but with some of Mao's ideas added to it. Mao made sure that almost everyone was educated by having literacy checkpoints, which you can think of like a payment every time you go to a market, but instead of money, you can use your literacy skills. This resulted in 90% of the Chinese population having a basic grasp of reading and writing. Keyword here, basic. Mao didn't want people to be completely educated because that would be problematic to the regime. So in terms of educating the masses, we can evaluate from the given information that he was successful in giving them this basic grasp of literacy skills. Another aim can be found in Source 25. In this source, we can see that Mao's goals for the first 5-year plan, 1953 to 1957, aimed for technological development like construction machinery, and also aimed mainly for a high rate of economic growth. He also emphasized the importance of heavy industry, which mainly focused on mining, iron manufacturing, and steel manufacturing. Let's dive into how he did this. In order to gain money, Mao did 2 things. With the Chinese government, Mao nationalized the banking system, meaning that banks were controlled by Mao's government. Secondly, Mao imposed discriminatory taxes on private businesses, forcing them to sell their companies or convert them into joint public-private companies, or APP. By imposing a discriminatory tax, Mao successfully eliminated privately owned companies in China by 1956, according to Warren Mack. We can also see this affirmed in Source 26. Trades like handicrafts were combined into small cooperatives, while small businesses, on the other hand, were given the right to unite and work together. Mao's plan to boost heavy industry worked. Production, or the output of raw materials such as metal, cement, and other industrial goods, were modernized under the 5-year plan. Mao managed to open many factories and building facilities, and with that, increased industrial production by 19% annually between 1952 and 1957. Here we can see Source 27 outlining his output plan and actual outputs. In the information given, Mao exceeded 5/7 of his goal, while in Source 23, Mao achieved 13 out of 17 of his industrial plans. But Mao needed to effectively transfer these raw and beautiful materials. So to do that, Mao had to build railway links that had been destroyed. This was modern technology in this time and one of Mao's priorities. And within a month, Mao restored the railways that links to Shanghai, the largest city in China. With this industrial revolution, Mao helped increase workers' income by 9%. So we can say that overall, Mao successfully increased China's output of raw materials, improved transportation or technology in China, and in addition, increased the workers' income.
Sorry, I forgot to include this in the video, but the reason why I merged the agricultural part with the industrial is because the industrial heavily influenced how the agricultural output was going to be like.
Now you may be wondering, what about agriculture? In Source 25, we find out that this wasn't one of Mao's main focus, but the Chinese government did try to make farming more modern, and similar to private businesses, encouraged farmers to collectivize their farms so that it would be easier for the government to step in and control the price and distribution of agricultural goods. And these goods will then be sold at low prices for urban workers. And by 1957, over 93% of farming households had willingly joined these small cooperatives or mutual aid teams. However, it's important to note that these collective farms did not help increase grain production by much. Source 33 tells us that despite the speed of compliance for high-level cooperatives, agriculture figures of 1957 were, I quote, disappointing. Grain production increased only by 1% over the year, whilst facing a 2% population rise. Although industrially Mao was doing a fantastic job, agriculturally was not so much, thus causing an economic imbalance between agriculture and industry. Also, with this imbalance, in Source 38, many peasants left the countryside to find work in the cities, leading to a double urban population by 1957, making it difficult for the countryside to produce enough food. The rate of industrial output thus was at 18.7% per year, whilst agriculture only 3.8%. With this information, we can say that Mao did succeed in encouraging the majority of farmers to join mutual aid teams and overall achieved industrial success. But that, however, impacted those in the agricultural sector massively, which also impacted food production. So not everyone benefited from this policy. Oh, now, before I forget, let's talk about food. I know it sounds like it's out of the blue, but my favorite food is rice. But if I was in China, my rice rations would have been cut short. Source 3 tells us that Lu Yan, who was the Minister of Agriculture, told the National People's Council that by reducing the daily consumption of each individual by a liang, they could reduce the amount of monthly consumption of grain. This was done in order to pay for the Soviet loans, which represents 3% of their total investments. And in addition, Mao reduced the prices paid to peasants for their grain production. In Source 16, Mao planned to expand farmland to 103 million hectares, was instead just increased by less than half of that planned amount. Worse, the area of food crops actually decreased by 3.3 hectares between 1956 to 1957. As stated before, the agricultural production was insufficient for the needs of both industry and the population. Now what about the mess left by Western powers? Well, in source 10 it tells us that Mao cleaned up China almost, I quote, overnight, which is just hyperbole for cleaning up China rapidly. Mao successfully cleaned China by tearing down ghettos, forcing opium addicts to abruptly stop taking opium, and abolish slave labor. Another thing he did for the people, well specifically women, was to give women their rights. As Mao once said, women hold up half the sky. If the statistics are any indication, communism has been good for women. And he was not wrong, as far as we know. Source 28 tells us that for centuries, women had no rights. Female babies would be drowned, girls would be sold as servants or prostitutes, and marriages were arranged for them. Mao helped these women by banning marriages, made divorce easier for women as well and not just men, and he planned nurseries so that mothers could join the great work with China. So yes, we can say that Mao really helped Chinese women with his social policies and helped clean up China from prostitution, opium addicts, and slave labor. What a great guy. Anyways, since I'm recording during a pandemic like it's 2020, if you didn't know, it's coronavirus, and ironically it started from China. So let's take a look at how Mao handled some diseases or sicknesses during his time. Firstly, Mao made healthcare become free, but the medication was not advanced. But Mao was like, yeah, whatever, I'm just gonna try and prevent diseases. He just wanted to prevent the spread of disease. And he did succeed. In source 7, it tells us that before 1958, Mao eliminated 3 major killers: smallpox, the plague, and cholera, while enforcing large-scale immunization campaign. So yes, his health policies were a huge success with the given information. But that was not the only thing he eliminated though. Despite looking pretty and all, Mao was a mean person. I'm not even lying, check this out. Besides getting families to love the country by cutting red tails in source 28, Mao in source 6 told party members in Shanghai via Instagram, actually a telegram,
"It will take 1 to 2,000 executions during this year to solve the problem."
Basically what he was saying is, kill everyone I don't like. He did this, I quote, suppress the arrogance of the enemy and enhance the people's morale.
And he was successful because there were few people who opposed him and his policies. Hence they flourished in China in the first half of his 5-year plan.
So, with all these social and economic progress, this dude here hated anyone who disagreed with his rule and would put them to the sword. Or should I say gun rather, because what's up for the worst. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something from this video. Thank you and have a lovely day. Mwah.
History of the First World War and its aftermath.
With Mao's blessing, they wreaked havoc in the name of cultural
Industrialization